there is a habit that seems harmless, one even encouraged by society as normal, a form of healthy release. But in truth, it silently robs us of life day by day. It doesn't scream, doesn't make a sound, but its consequences are unmistakable. A fatigue with no clear cause, a lack of motivation, a vague guilt each morning upon waking, and a hollow gaze when we look in the mirror, unable to recognize the person we once were. Masturbation, when abused, is not merely a physical act. It is a surrender to instant gratification. It rewires the brain to avoid effort, to seek ease, and to abandon the will to fight. The very spirit that once defined what it meant to be a man. And the worst part, modern society glorifies comfort, while virtues like discipline, willpower, and self-control are dismissed as outdated. Yet the ancient Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, warned of this very thing millennia ago. If we fail to master our desires, we become slaves to our own bodies. So if today you find yourself trapped in that quiet cycle, this is not the time for shame. It is the time to awaken, to begin a journey of self-mastery, reclaiming the inner strength you've slowly lost, bit by bit. And if you're ready, what I'm about to share may forever change the way you view that habit. 1. You're not relieving stress. You're training yourself to be weaker. In modern society, there is a familiar excuse that many use to justify frequent masturbation. I'm just relieving stress. The phrase sounds harmless, even rational, by mainstream scientific standards. People compare it to having a drink after a long day or getting a massage to relax. But what most of us fail to see is that masturbation isn't merely a form of release. Behind every relief lies a mental conditioning process, one that may be quietly making us weaker by the day. To grasp this, we must first understand how the brain processes reward and emotion. Each time we achieve something, whether it's a major milestone or simply a feeling of ease, the brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter tied to pleasure and motivation. Dopamine is what makes us feel good when we eat well, receive praise, fall in love, or complete a task after sustained effort. The issue arises when dopamine is triggered by actions requiring no effort, like masturbation, causing the brain to associate pleasure with ease. Over time, this creates what's known as negative conditioning. Each time you repeat an uncontrolled behavior, you're teaching your brain one lesson. When I'm tired, stressed, or bored, I should seek quick pleasure to escape this feeling. You're installing a reflex. Discomfort must be escaped, not endured. This weakens your ability to face real-world challenges. You grow impatient when work gets hard, irritable when things don't go your way, and quick to quit when goals feel distant. That's because your brain has grown accustomed to instant dopamine without the struggle. In Stoicism, this is profoundly dangerous. One of its core tenets is that willpower is forged through resisting the easy and choosing the right, despite the cost. When you repeatedly escape discomfort through physical pleasure, you erode mental resilience, what Stoics call inner discipline. You are telling yourself, I cannot bear this feeling, and that message, repeated daily, weekly, becomes part of your identity. More troubling still, masturbation is rarely a neutral act. It is often tied to pornography, unrealistic fantasies, or secrecy, further deepening dependence on fleeting, artificial sensations. This distances you from the real, a world built on time, effort, and perseverance. In the real world, you don't press a button to receive your reward. You work, you strive, you wait. If your brain forgets this, you lose one of the most vital human capacities, the ability to delay gratification. The ability to delay gratification is one of the most reliable predictors of long-term success, more so than IQ. According to numerous studies, one who resists short-term reward in favor of greater future gains is someone capable of persistence, long-range vision, and the discipline to sacrifice ease for meaning. Stoicism reveres this quality, seeing it as the root of true inner freedom. Thus, masturbation, when repeated in an ungoverned state, doesn't just drain your time or physical energy. It rewires your mind and nervous system, weakening your ability to engage with the world. Rather than facing stress, you avoid it. Rather than building endurance, you teach yourself retreat. And rather than growing stronger day by day, you accept a version of yourself that is fragile, prone to surrender, and increasingly difficult to change. One important point to note: the effects of this behavior aren't immediate. Like drops of water slowly hollowing stone, each unconscious act of masturbation erodes your will. You don't notice you're weakening until you stand before a worthy goal and find that you no longer have the drive to pursue it. In that moment, you wonder why you feel lazy, distracted, unmotivated. But in truth, the foundation within you has long been crumbling. You just hadn't seen it yet. Worse still, once you've conditioned yourself to relieve stress through cheap pleasure, you become intolerant of ordinary negative emotions like sadness, anxiety, loneliness, or fatigue. This turns the behavior into a kind of emotional sedative. And like any addictive substance, you'll need more of it to feel the same relief. That's why many fall into compulsive cycles, hours each day lost to this habit, harming their work, relationships, and physical health. The Stoics emphasized on timeless truth. There is no freedom without self-mastery. You may have wealth, recognition, even physical beauty, but if you cannot govern your smallest desires, you will soon lose what matters most. That is why indulgence in a small act, like masturbation, may reflect a deeper loss of control within, and that runs entirely counter to the way of life the Stoic philosophers upheld. The troubling truth is this: masturbation rarely stands alone. It is often surrounded by an ecosystem of bad habits. Reflect honestly. The moments you satisfy yourself are rarely when you're at your best. They occur when you are tired, bored, stagnant, or coming off a string of wasted days, which means this act isn't just physiological. It's a conditioned state. Every time you choose it to cope with difficult feelings, you teach your mind, I don't need to face this. I just need to forget it for a while. And this is the heart of the problem. Avoidance never resolves emotion. It only buries it until it returns stronger. The emptiness and all regret you feel afterward doesn't stem from morality or societal shame, but from a deeper truth. You chose the easy way over the right one. Your mind knows this, even if you don't say it out loud. And it is this knowledge that weakens the trust you have in yourself. 2. Dependency destroys self-respect, and a man cannot live without it. Self-respect is not arrogance, nor is it the image we try to project to society. Self-respect is the deep inner sense that we are worthy of ourselves, that we live in accordance with the moral standards and virtues we believe in. It is the foundation of true confidence, not drawn from praise or recognition, but from the relationship between you and yourself when no one else is watching. The Stoics understood that all forms of slavery, including slavery to emotion or desire, corrode self-respect. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "He who cannot rule his desires is never truly free." Here, freedom isn't political or social, it's spiritual. The ability to act through reason, not be dragged by impulse. When a man becomes dependent on pleasure, whether masturbation or any other form of escape, Each repeated act becomes a quiet message to himself. I'm not strong enough to say no. And when that message is repeated often enough, it's no longer just an act. It becomes part of who he is. That man begins to live with a silent doubt that he is weak, that he lacks control, that he cannot be trusted. That doubt seeps into his mind like water dripping onto stone. Slow but relentless, it infiltrates every decision, from procrastination to avoiding challenges to undervaluing himself in relationships. The thought, I can't control myself, slowly mutates into, I'm not worthy, and then becomes, I cannot change. What's terrifying is that this process unfolds in silence. No one sees it. No one scolds you. No one holds you accountable. But you know, you witness every time you give in, every promise you break to yourself. And the deepest blow to your self-respect doesn't come from the gaze of others. It comes from your own eyes, each morning in the mirror. From the Stoic perspective, people aren't wounded by circumstances, but by how they judge their own actions. You can fail, but if you fail while doing what's right, with discipline and courage, you still keep your self-respect. But if you succeed by betraying your values, by living falsely and surrendering to desire, you will feel hollow, because you know it wasn't real. That is why dependency, even when hidden, even when rationalized, is a quiet crack in the soul. And the more intelligent, the more self-aware a man is, the heavier the burden beyond his. Because he sees the gap between who he is and who he could be. And that gap, if not bridged with disciplined action, becomes a quiet, gnawing despair that nothing else can soothe. Self-respect cannot be bought with compliments, expensive clothes, or superficial achievements. It comes from only one thing: being honest with yourself and keeping your word, not to others but to yourself. When you say, I will no longer be ruled by this, and you follow through, you become trustworthy in your own eyes. And when you trust yourself, the world begins to sense it too. In relationships, especially with women, self-respect functions like an invisible force. Women may not articulate it, but they feel it. A man with self-respect isn't arrogant, controlling, or boastful. He is grounded. He has nothing to prove because he is not shaken by temptation or the need for approval. He chooses what is right and lives by it. By contrast, a man ruled by dependency often carries a downcast gaze, inconsistent actions, and unsettled energy, because inside him is a battle with no end between the desire to change and the habit of surrender. And that war, if left unresolved, will cost him the most vital thing: respect from himself and those around him. Epictetus once said, "No one can insult you more than you insult yourself." And that is a truth few wish to face. Every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you knowingly do what is wrong, you insult your own soul. No one needs to say a word. You still feel the pain because your soul is alive, and it will not accept the lie. Self-respect is the foundation upon which anything lasting can be built. Without it, everything is surface: shaky success, shallow relationships, unsteady work. But with it, you can start over at any time, fail as often as needed, and still not lose your way, because you know who you are and what is worthy of you. The Stoics did not fear the loss of material things. They feared the loss of themselves. They understood the only person you must live with for the rest of your life is you. And if that relationship is broken, nothing outside can satiate you. Dependency never stops at a single act. It is the beginning of a chain of compromises. You give in once, and it becomes easier to give in again. Gradually, you lose your ability to say no. Your standards erode, and you begin to accept a life you do not truly respect. This is the slow descent, and no one can pull you out but you. And that is why a man cannot live without self-respect, not because of pride, but because without it, you lose the compass, the conviction, and the capacity to build a meaningful life. You can lie to the whole world, but you cannot lie to the one who is always with you. That is yourself. 3. Your body wasn't designed to live this way, and it will resist. The human body is a complex system, refined over millions of years of evolution to serve life, survival, and growth. Every biological reaction, every hormonal cycle, every stream of energy carries a purpose. When a behavior is repeated unnaturally, beyond necessity, and without control, the body does not stay silent. It resists. Masturbation, if practiced moderately and mindfully, is not a problem for most healthy bodies. However, when it becomes a repeated habit throughout the day, or the default response to negative emotions, the body begins to react as if it were being violated by its own master. First, we must understand that each ejaculation depletes the body of valuable biological resources. Semen is not a meaningless fluid. It contains a host of biological compounds, proteins, enzymes, minerals, zinc, and most importantly, the male sex hormone, testosterone. When masturbation becomes frequent, the body must constantly expend energy to regenerate what was lost. This puts the endocrine system under chronic strain, especially the HPG axis, hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, the core of male reproductive and hormonal regulation. Testosterone, the central hormone behind strength, decisiveness, vitality, and masculine will, is directly affected when the body is repeatedly stimulated and depleted. After each ejaculation, testosterone tends to drop temporarily as the body works to restore balance. If this happens too often, hormone levels don't fully recover. The result is prolonged fatigue, sluggishness, diminished vitality, reduced desire, and a loss of natural drive. The decline in testosterone affects more than just sexual function. It impacts the entire biological and neurological system. Testosterone promotes muscle protein synthesis, maintains bone density, stabilizes mood, boosts confidence, and enhances competitiveness. When this hormone falls, the effects ripple across body and mind. Reduced focus, impaired memory, loss of motivation to train, and even mild depression. The body was not made to absorb constant, unchecked sexual pleasure. In nature, sex is a biological reward unlocked after effort, pursuit, bonding, protection, and establishing value. But modern technology allows individuals to access limitless sexual stimulation through the internet and pornography. This floods the nervous system with excessive dopamine. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for excitement, is not only tied to sex, but also serves as the engine of motivation. When the brain becomes accustomed to elevated dopamine levels caused by masturbation and pornography, it becomes numb to natural dopamine triggers like completing tasks, exercising, or connecting with loved ones. To the dopamine-dependent mind, those acts feel boring, unstimulating. The body will not endure this in silence. It sends signals through neural fatigue, persistent tiredness, and a loss of interest in things that once brought you joy. The consequence is not merely emotional, it's biological. The brain's reward centers, such as the nucleus accumbens, begin to deteriorate, causing behavioral imbalance. Moreover, excessive masturbation disrupts the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, the two forces that regulate stress and rest. Constantly swinging between extreme stimulation and emptiness after climax destabilizes these systems. A man begins to feel tired but unable to sleep, resting but never restored, or busy but without purpose. This isn't just behavioral dysfunction. It's the body's revolt against a lifestyle that defies its natural design. Workouts stop working. Muscle doesn't grow. Endurance drops. Sleep becomes shallow. The immune system weakens. These symptoms are often mistaken for laziness or lack of drive. But the deeper root is biological depletion, brought on by artificial stimulation. The body holds its own intelligence. When a harmful pattern repeats, it issues warnings through physical symptoms, mood shifts, emotional instability, and overall life performance. If these signs are ignored, or worse, dismissed as normal, the breakdown continues, slowly but inevitably. Stoics believe body and soul cannot be separated. A strong spirit requires a strong vessel to fulfill its mission in life. If you continually harm your body for fleeting pleasures, you are destroying the only instrument you have to live and to serve. And when the body starts to push back with lethargy, illness, and drained energy, it is not punishment, it is a reminder. You are moving against nature. No one denies that physiology is part of being human. But when a physical act becomes a psychological escape and is repeated, it turns into a biological burden. And the body, in its quiet honesty, responds exactly as it is used, filled with strength when respected, broken when abused. 4. Desire is not the enemy, but it must be transformed. Desire is an inseparable part of being human. Since ancient times, this biological drive has fueled reproduction, community building, and the birth of civilization. The Stoics did not deny the existence of desire. They did not consider it evil or sinful. They saw it as raw energy, something to be guided, not suppressed. Desire is like fire. It warms, cooks, and lights the dark. But if it escapes those bounds, it devours forests. Likewise, sexual energy, if left unchecked and untransformed, can destroy mental stability, physical well-being, and inner dignity. From the Stoic perspective, the issue is not the presence of the desire, but whether one allows it to rule their actions. When you act out of immediate pleasure, you relinquish self-mastery. At that moment, you become a servant of impulse rather than its conscious master. Epictetus taught, don't seek to eliminate emotion, learn to govern it. Sexual desire is a powerful emotion, and because it is powerful, if transformed, it can become a source of great strength. Stoics didn't choose repression, for repression breeds pressure, and pressure explodes when not directed. They chose transformation, channeling instinctual energy into something higher. Motivation, creativity, service, or discipline. Many historical figures, though not Stoics by name, practiced this principle of transmuting desire. Nikola Tesla, the great inventor, remained celibate not out of disdain for sex, but because he understood the power of concentrating energy toward creation. Spartan warriors, before battle, were expected to abstain to preserve their inner ferocity. Eastern martial artists applied the same principle in cultivating internal energy and focus. Beneath such discipline lies biological truth. When sexual energy is not expended through fleeting pleasure, the body stores it and converts it into inner strength. People call this by many names: transmutation, semen retention, spiritual discipline. But all point to the same truth: knowing how to use desire's energy to build, not destroy. When a man trains himself to govern his desire, he does not become numb or cold. On the contrary, he becomes sharper, calmer, and stronger. Because his energy is not scattered by meaningless urges, his mind becomes more focused, his goals clearer, his actions more aligned. And when energy isn't depleted, the body feels abundant. Testosterone is preserved, presence deepens, confidence becomes natural. At a deeper level, desire is a measure of our urge to connect, to create, to grow. When used solely for self-indulgence, it becomes trivial and quickly exhausted. But when tied to a higher aim, serving others, self-development, contribution, it becomes an unstoppable force. This is why great individuals live with purpose. They have learned to transmute their inner force into outward action. The Stoics understood, no one can eliminate desire entirely, nor should they try. The real question is, do you serve your desire, or does it serve you? You serve it. You chase pleasure. When it serves you, you harness energy towards something greater. And the difference lies in one word: awareness. Awareness separates you from your Stoicism. Instead of reacting instinctively, you observe your emotion, recognize it, then choose a deliberate response. This doesn't just help you avoid regretful actions. It builds a foundation of inner discipline. To transmute desire is not to avoid sex entirely, nor to deny human nature. It is to live with intention, to choose and not to be ruled by impulse. In today's world, where provocative images, endless consumption, and cheap entertainment live in your pocket, mastering desire becomes an act of rebellion, a way to reclaim freedom from modern temptation. And that very act, reclaiming control, is the foundation of a Stoic soul. For if you cannot govern the smallest thing, your own instincts, you cannot govern anything greater. But if you can, you are no longer your own victim. Youth become a guide, a builder, and a man in constant evolution. 5. There is no true freedom if you are still ruled by your body. Freedom is one of humanity's deepest longings. From ancient times to the present, every society and culture has revered freedom as a symbol of dignity, power, and a meaningful life. But there's a truth few recognize. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is the ability to choose what is right, even when you don't feel like doing it. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic philosopher, once said, "He who cannot control his own body cannot be free." This is not a moral declaration. It is a factual observation, distilled from millennia of insight into human nature. A person ruled by emotion, by instant desire, by unchecked biological reflexes, does not live by reason, but reacts like a machine. In today's world, this is more apparent than ever. New technologies, entertainment media, social networks, fast food, and pornography all compete for control over your attention and emotions. The system is designed to exploit our most primitive instincts, sexual urges, the need for approval, fear of abandonment, the craving for instant gratification. And without a strong guiding force from within, one easily becomes a victim of their own body. The body is not the enemy, but it is a part of you that must be governed, not the one in charge. When hunger comes, you can choose a nourishing meal or reach for junk food. When loneliness arises, you can pursue real connection or settle for cheap stimulation. When desire flares up, you can channel it into meaningful action or lose yourself in fleeting pleasure. In each of these choices, real freedom is tested. True freedom does not emerge in moments of chanting slogans. It appears in the quiet space where you face the choice between desire and principle, between impulse and reason, between the old reflex and the new response. And what defines freedom is not whether the choice is easy or hard, but that you know you are choosing and are driven by nothing but your own conscious awareness. The Stoics understood to be a slave to emotion is no different than to be a slave to another person. One might appear free on the outside, but if within they are governed by fear, by pleasure, by unconscious behavior, they live in chains invisible to the eye. They lose autonomy, lose the ability to steer their life through reason, and ultimately lose the sense of self-control that underpins all freedom. Nowhere is this more evident than in the realm of desire. Sexual desire is one of humanity's strongest drives because it is tied to the survival of the species. But because it is powerful, if left unchecked, it can override morality, reason, and responsibility. When a man lets himself be ruled by physical pleasure, he slowly loses calm, loses discernment, and begins trading time, health, and dignity for momentary indulgence. The consequences don't stop with the self. A man who cannot govern himself often cannot sustain healthy relationships. He becomes impulsive, reactive, inconsistent, and untrustworthy. In society, he struggles with long-term goals because under pressure, the body demands release, and he lacks the strength to say no. The ability to say no to desire is not repression. It is the clearest sign of inner freedom. Only when you can stand firm in the face of desire and not let it dictate your actions can you choose the right path, even when it is slower and harder. And in that difficult choice, real freedom is born, not from society's permission, but from the maturity of your own will. It's also important to understand that bodily domination isn't limited to pleasure. It includes laziness, fear, avoidance of discomfort, and addiction to ease. Freedom from the Stoic view is not just the absence of temptation. It is the ability to step into difficulty willingly for the sake of meaning. When you can step outside your comfort zone, endure discomfort without complaint, and stay committed to your path, you are living as a free man. Freedom is not instinct. It is a skill. It is trained through small acts, waking early when the body wants to sleep in, exercising when you feel lazy, reading when the mind craves distraction, keeping promises when quitting feels easier, resisting desire when it clouds your judgment. Each time you succeed, you loosen the chains of the body and move closer to true liberty. The Stoics did not teach us to become saints. They taught us to live by reason, to know what is right, and to have the discipline to do it, even when the body revolts. And here lies the core. Inner freedom doesn't come from lacking desire. It comes from not being ruled by it. No one is born master of their impulses, but anyone can train. And through that training, every step taken beyond instinct opens the door to a deeper, more purposeful, and lasting life. When you govern yourself, nothing outside can govern you. And this is what every philosopher, warrior, and great man throughout history has known. I used to think I had control over myself, that habits like masturbation didn't affect my life as long as I kept them hidden. But then I began to realize a hard truth. Weakness doesn't always show up in obvious behavior. It quietly seeps into the smallest decisions of everyday life. Each time I broke a promise to myself, even if it was just a little longer, I felt myself grow weaker. Not in muscle, but in will. Waking up a bit later, delaying work just a little more, rushing through a workout, losing the sharpness I once took pride in. And I understood that if I didn't change from the smallest things, no achievement would be real. I began by setting clear principles. No unconscious masturbation. No using it to escape emotion. No letting desire dictate the direction of a day. I didn't turn myself into a perfect man. I simply chose to be honest with myself. I learned to observe my emotions, write down what stirred inside, and instead of reacting, I chose. I read a book instead of scrolling social media, went for a walk instead of sitting in the dark, called a friend instead of conversing with pleasure, and little by little, each of those small actions restored the respect I had for myself, because no one can master life if they're still running from themselves. If anything I've shared has stirred something in you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's next. Because sometimes freedom doesn't come from changing the whole world. It comes from a single moment when you decide to stop betraying yourself. See you in the next video.